Forget Lane Kiffin at the podium. How can I possibly compete with that? Come on. SEC Media Days. And because it just means more in the SEC, of course, that this is the official kickoff to the college football season each and every year. We hear that. And yes, the SEC Media Days have typically kicked off the Media Day smorgasbord across the Power Five and all of college football. But this year, the Big 12 had its Media Days last week, but it's still the SEC Media Days, the unofficial kickoff to the college football season. Appreciate everybody being here. We will get to your comments and questions in the live chat. We will discuss what's going on right now, what's being said. Not a lot going on, what's being said, although Georgia and Alabama also both received big commits here in the last 24 hours or so. And I will leave the link in the comment section and also here in the live chat so you can join me here, because this is our call-in show for a Monday, a little bit late. It's kind of difficult to do it at noon, the typical Eastern time. So our summer festival, as you all know, comes your way with call-in shows at least, let me find it here. So I can't find it, but at least we've got call-in shows on Monday at noon, Thursday at 6, Friday at 9, but kind of difficult to do that without the internet. So that's why we're 2.5 minutes tardy, 2.5 hours tardy on this particular Monday. The internet needed to be upgraded. So we are with you. So good to see everybody here. Again, SEC Media Days with Mizzou, Eli Drinkwitz, Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin, and Brian Kelly. I just heard from Brian Kelly a little bit of what he had to say to the SEC Network folks just a few minutes ago. Probably the most notable statement thus far, and I have yet to hear anything about what kicks the coaches are wearing. So actually, that's been a pleasant surprise. That's been a pleasant surprise because that's become a little bit overdrawn the last few years. Maybe the first time that they picked on Dan Mullen and he had a thing about Nikes and a thing about kicks, and that was his thing. Okay, that's kind of fun. But then it turned out to be a yearly thing for the past 4 or 5 years. But now, a couple coaches I've heard from and nothing about shoes yet. But Brian Kelly talked about having better talent at LSU. Tim Tebow actually was practically busting his gut talking about how much better a player Brian Kelly will have at LSU than he had at Notre Dame. I guess. Tim Tebow put LSU into the category of Alabama and Georgia. Now, Brian Kelly's got to get them there. They're not there. They're not anywhere close to there. We know that. And LSU fans and other college football fans, all of you, we'll let you know tonight, need to nail down the time, but we're going to have Lon Phillips Sullivan here from LSU Odyssey live to talk about LSU's Media Days, and we will discuss the rest of the SEC Media Days and anything else you want to talk about in college football, of course. So let me drop the link in the comments section. Here it is. I see Yakoff 22's here. Willie's here as well. Good to see all of you. So we dropped the link into the chat there if you'd like to call here at the Voice of College Football, and we will take your comments and questions. We got the real MVP on the line, as well as Exploring with Ben and Sam. He's all over the place filling this thing up. Michigan Rick, good to see you as well. Rogue Jokers, good stuff from you as well. We're in a bit of a makeshift transition time here, so bear with us just so everybody can see me and at least hear me, and the same with you. So again, I will leave the link right there in the chat. What I love about the typical coaches speak, which we're all bored of it, sick of it, although most of it's true. Most of it is true. We need to take one game at a time. That is true. You need to take one. You can't be playing Alabama in your head in July when you don't play them until the 10th game of the season. That's idiotic. That would not be too successful. But Lane Kiffin started getting all sorts of questions about just trick plays and about the Alabama game. And again, that's what I don't mind, is when the coaches bring a little reality to the media to say, are you serious? You're asking me about the Alabama game. It's the second week of July. We're playing Alabama like game 5. All right. We got fantasy football here. I think this is our boy DeAndre.
What's up, Mark?
How's it going, man?
Good. I gotta figure out why I said so many different names.
Yeah, every time you're on here, I see something different, but this time it's I see fantasy football. That's all I see.
Yep. So my first question to you, Mark, is how would Clemson, Florida State, and Miami going to the SEC help them outside of money?
Outside of money?
Mm-hmm. I'm going to bring up my point while I'm asking that question, not the answer.
Well, you understand what you're asking, though. That's almost like saying, how much besides the money would it help you to buy a new car if I handed you $50,000? Well, that's the whole deal.
Okay. So let me ask you this. Texas A&M, Ole Miss, all these programs make more money than Clemson, Miami, and Florida State currently, except for I think Florida State might be out there. And those programs are probably on the same level as Clemson and Florida State with their current situation in the ACC, correct?
Sure. Who'd you throw out there?
Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Texas, Oklahoma probably have just as much money, has more money than Clemson, Florida State, and Miami. Yeah. I think Florida State spends a lot more money than those programs. But my point is, throwing money at something necessarily doesn't help them. Because let's say SEC, the Big Ten, right? Let's say, well, we're going to have our own national championship game or whatever, right? The Fox has theirs on Big Ten. The SEC has theirs on ESPN. So Clemson, the Big 12 teams, the ACC, the Big 12 teams, the rest of the Pac-10, whoever else say, well, we're going to keep the same format. And we're going to say we're national champions too. So what does that really help? That's what I'm saying. It just seems like we're going back to the 80s and 70s and 90s if we go that route. So that's what I'm saying. Why wouldn't those schools keep their same positions? Because a couple years from now, who says they won't say, ESPN say, hey, y'all football's got a lot better. We'll throw a whole bunch of money at y'all too. So, I'm just asking.
Well, it's like taking a job. So anybody's going to take a job that's they consider to be a better job because they're being paid more.
Okay.
So it might not be a better situation for them, but they might get paid more. So the money just can't be discounted. The money's the money. The money's going to trump everything else. I also think we've seen an uptick in recruiting out of Texas A&M since they joined the SEC. I would think, Clemson's had no issues with recruiting, but Florida State may benefit. Miami may benefit from being attached to the SEC in regards to recruiting. A lot of players want to play in the SEC.
And that's true. But, Florida State, before whatever happened with Jimbo after he left, they were recruiting at a high level just like the rest of the SEC schools were. And they had that same TV contract, correct?
Yeah.
They didn't fall off because of my argument, the reason why Miami and Florida State and Florida has had troubles because Central Florida, South Florida, and all those other schools came along and started having football programs, and they taking away a lot of the talent because the old joke, the ACC and the ACC, Florida State probably second team, probably finished second in the ACC back in the day. I don't know if you remember those jokes.
Yeah.
Another thing I want to touch on is closer injuries for last year. I know a lot of people saying, well, DJ, we done had this conversation before about DJ, but I would have looked it up. EJ Williams only played in 7 games last year. A lot of those games that he played in was with a broken finger. I can't pronounce his name. Tony Stovall, Stello. He didn't play at all. Spector didn't play at all. And I went back and looked at that Ohio State game. When they inserted Dabo's son, not saying he's a world beater, but when they inserted his son into the game, that gave them a slot receiver, and they moved the ball pretty well against Iowa State. Now, I don't know if you remember this Iowa State game, but Clemson starting center didn't play. Don't get me wrong. I know Clemson scored over 30 points the last 5 games. Very, very easy schedule because they had Connecticut. Not saying Wake Forest was easy, but they're not known for their defense. South Carolina, a couple other teams. South Carolina might have been difficult. When their offense started improving, but that game against Iowa State, they didn't have their starting center. So my question is, how can some of the people project that it's all DJ's fault when you look at the injuries? It's been a lot of fault of the offensive line and lack of receivers. Now, I like to also point out that Shipley, what's the name? Page, they didn't play all the games either. They didn't play 8 or 9 games. And then also Leon Dixon took some of their route carries because he was there starting in the beginning. So I'm just saying that I think that people are not looking at the potential Clemson offense. They come back healthy. Because Justin Ross was playing the slot, which I still couldn't understand. Then you had, what's my boy name? Fred Latson. He stayed hurt. I don't think he ever got right. And then you had Nagata. And he only played in 8 games.
Well, what's your answer, Dan?
What was that?
Your answer is people want a short and quick answer. People want to blame one person. They want to make it very simple. And most of the people that are critical aren't watching Clemson football all the time like you are. They're watching a couple games and then they're just going off of whatever the narrative is, and the narrative becomes very simplistic. So the narrative is to blame the quarterback. That's the only problem.
Yeah. And then also people aren't looking at what Allen did towards the end of the year. The tight end number 84, he came on. He had like 5 or 6 good touchdown catches towards the end of the year. I just think that when we look at this team, we got to take the whole look at what is possible instead of saying, hey, it's all DJ's fault. And I really don't think it's all DJ's fault.
No, of course it's not.
Yeah.
I watched enough to see the offensive line issues and to see that the wide receiver core isn't anywhere close to what it's been. Right.
Yeah. I don't think if we all know that your offensive line sucks. You're not going to do well. I don't care what you did. ETA came back, and he's the all-time ACC leader rusher. I think his last year he only had 970 yards rushing. His senior year. I don't think he got to a total of 1,000 yards.
DeAndre, you're an NFL fan. You'll appreciate this. I turned on a Cleveland radio station this morning while I was in the car, and they were talking about the Browns. Mm-hmm. And the 2 knuckleheads that were talking, I don't know who they. Since I listened to them for a while, and then I figured out who one of them is, and I actually know him pretty well. But regardless, I couldn't believe this conversation they were having. Number one, they were looking at Jacoby Brissett and his numbers from last season, and they came to the determination basically that he's a dink and dunk type passer. That's fine. But the next comment that they made was he must throw a lot of outs. They were calling him a dink because his yards per completion, his yards per attempt was very low. It's pretty low compared to most starting quarterbacks. Then they start talking about him. He must be throwing a lot of outs. And I'm like, do you really know what you're talking about? Outs,
Yeah, it's 10 or
out
15
routes
yards.
are some of the more difficult throws to make in football. You have to have a cannon to throw an out route. That's any scout or coach will tell you. And then they made some just ridiculous comments about the center position, that they didn't care who played center because it didn't really matter. All they do is snap the ball. And I'm like, oh my word.
Right.
They make line calls. They need to protect. They need to run block. They need to pull. It just insane. So what I'm telling you, DeAndre, most people don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah. I got this off subject. So I was watching SEC down south, and they were talking about the Deshaun Watson's first game against Bama, and they I always felt that the one that they won the national championship team was better than the team that lost. But what is his name? Paul Feinbaum. He said he felt that the first Deshaun Watson team was better. What do you think about it? Because without Mike Williams, I don't think it was better. And they also had Dexter Lawrence on the second one. So I don't see how they came up with that logic.
Well, but you just gave us two big additions to the 2016 team. So who did they have in 15 who was key that graduated, that left?
Nobody. They brought the same team back, but they added Dexter Lawrence and they lost Kerr. They lost Curse and a couple of other guys. Goodson might have been gone. I believe those two guys were gone, but they were saying that they thought that 2015 was better. Lawson was gone. I think the defensive end that went to the Buffalo Bills. He had left. Fred Dotson, DODDS, he was gone, but they had replaced him with better players, in my opinion.
Yeah. Don't know what play there. I would not agree with that.
Yeah, I know that team the next year lost to Pitt, but I think that I put that Pitt loss on Dabo because he should have went ahead and kicked the field goal instead of giving them a short field, going for it on trying to run a sweep to the outside. That's why I felt about that one.
Well, sure, the team did have a lot more narrow misses, and obviously they lost the game by 1 point to Pitt at home. They did almost lose to State. With a field goal kick, they lose and they don't go to the playoff. And they had another rough one against
Troy.
the FC. No, not the FCS, but the Group of Five, the Sun Belt. Troy game. Yeah, they won by like 6.
Yeah, that year was, I don't know, they were just trying to get back to the playoffs or what, but you're right, they didn't play as good as they did the year before, but the defense was better than that year. They went to Auburn and pretty much destroyed them.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people won't let you go, but yeah, I was just wondering about that because I felt like that performance by Deshaun Watson the first time against Bama was just amazing, and it took everything that Alabama had to be a one-man game. I mean, all he had was Tyler Renfro as a freshman, a redshirt freshman. Those other guys, I don't think they smithed the NFL.
And really, defense might have been better because even Alabama didn't do that much in the playoffs against them.
Right. Well, okay. Well, all right, Mark, man, you have a good day, man, and we'll catch up later.
Thanks, DeAndre.
All right.
Let me catch up with a super chat before we bring on Ballard here. We got Lemansky. Mark gave us a hair close-up. Well, Lemansky, if you're going to toss me a super chat for a hair close-up, I'll be throwing a lot more hair close-ups at you. That's because I had to figure out something with my laptop here. Yeah, we got a little makeshift operation right now. May last for a few days. We'll see. Seems to me he uses Elite hair gel. You know what? I'll check up on the hair gel. We'll give you a report, Lemansky, on the hair gel because I get accused of the, what is it called? just for men. No, it's not that. It's just it darkens the hair. It's not supposed to be a hair darkener, but you put gel in your hair looks darker. That's anybody. That's not just me. Goes to a salon. No. I'm cheap. I'm too cheap to go to a salon. No, my hair looks the same regardless of who cuts it. I can go to a salon and spend whatever you spend at a salon. I wouldn't know, $100, and then I can get my what used to be just a couple of years ago was like a $12 haircut. Now they're up to like 19, 20. I tip 24, $25. Like the cost cutters kind of haircut. Yeah. Or my sister can cut it. And you know what? Within a day or so, it looks exactly the same. It doesn't even matter. And I don't mean sport clips. It's pretty much where I'm going. VCF poised for upcoming season. Okay. We're getting there. We're really not poised for the season right this second, but we just wanted to go live to catch up with everyone. We haven't really produced anything since last Thursday. All right, let's get to Ballard here. Ballard, how are you? No, we got Yakov.
Ballard was here. I was confused. I was thinking, Mark, I saw myself there in the corner. I thought, wow, this Ballard looks familiar. And then I realized it was because I'm on the screen there.
There you are.
Yeah. Mark, first of all, I hope you're doing well there. Taking a little break from work here. And I thought I would add I think we'll call it a little humorous idea here. I certainly would never bother you with this type of thing during the season when there's actual games, but I was kind of brainstorming. I thought I might have maybe 2 or 3 ideas, semi-joking, but maybe serious, that maybe some ways for you to start a live show.
Yeah.
The first one, I'm going to take a chance. I'm going to play some slight music over online for a second. This first one.
Whoa, no.
Will you get in trouble?
It's copyrighted. I don't
think the song is.
I can't make a penny.
Okay, then I'll just tell you what this one is.
You tell me what it is.
Okay.
I'm not going to be able to play it. You understand that?
I was going to literally just play it like right here. But I mean,
oh, yeah. If you play like 2 seconds of it, it'll.
Oh, okay. Well, then 2 seconds.
It'll be
this. Oh, now.
No, don't play 2. That's what I'm saying. 2 seconds is too much.
Oh, okay. It doesn't matter.
YouTube analytics and the algorithms and the, what do they call them? The bots?
I didn't even know if this was a song that was.
I one time was doing a live stream and I had another laptop open and the volume was barely on and a window was open and started playing an ad for like 4 seconds. And
well, the spies there at YouTube. Yeah. Okay. I'm glad you said that. Obviously, I'm not familiar with that because I don't host a show. I just watch YouTube. I didn't really think about that. Anyway, so this one was slightly more basketball. I was about to play them, Mark. Remember
But there is music that's
allowed.
That's open. Like it's not the best of music, of course,
right.
But
I didn't know if this song was. But here's what it is, Mark. This is a little more basketballish. Let's say that you're in your room. I know your live streams generally start as it shows your studio, not where you are now, but when you're in your other part of your home, if that's where you are, and then you come sit down. No fanfare, although it's a fine show. It doesn't matter. So the funny idea I had. I guess you could do it, is a little more basketball. So let's say the lights are on in your living room or so and showing your couch. Next thing you know, they go out. And then the song, remember the Bulls introduction songs from the 90s?
Yeah, I can kind of hear it in my head.
Which is what I was going to play, but I guess you don't want me to play it. I was going to play that for a few seconds. Okay, it doesn't matter.
I would love for you to play it, but no.
Well, after you're done, you can get on and hear yourself. And then, all of a sudden the lights dim up a little bit. You're sitting on the couch, and they say you have a voiceover there. It doesn't have to be live. This is pre-recorded, of course.
Sure.
You don't have to do it. You don't have to do it every show. Maybe you could do a few versions if you want. And the bull, some announcer, maybe even be you, says, "At host, 6'1" from Kent State, Mark Rogers." And then you get up off of your couch because you're not playing a game. You're on the couch. Maybe your kids are there. You got a few other people at your house. As you get up, you give everyone high fives, and then cuts away to you sitting down in your studio there, and maybe you even take off your jacket and you just have regular clothes on, not a jersey. But that's a little more basketballish. But I thought that might be a cute introduction, showy introduction, a fun introduction to your live call-in shows.
You're reminding me of a This Is Sports Center promo. Do you remember those?
I think where they would all of a sudden take off their like basketball warm-ups.
Yeah, I
that
forget
suit
who
on instead.
the two anchors were, but they
Yeah.
did the whole thing. Yeah, they gave them the introductions, like the basketball with the spotlight and the whole deal, and the music in the background, and then they tore off the warm-ups, and they had their suits and
Right.
ties.
You could just have a gray shirt on and pants. You don't have to have a jersey on or anything like that. And then take that off, sit down, and maybe as the music fades down a little bit, and then start getting to the show.
So that's idea number one.
Right. And the other ones are more footballish. Well, one is going to combine. The second one might be, Mark, where it's just showing a picture of, let's say, your bedroom door or wherever. And all of a sudden it opens up and you start walking down the hall, and then maybe it turns a corner. Another shot of you walking down various halls. Kind of, what that is, Mark, is reference to how Nebraska takes the field. All of a sudden they come out of the locker room, they start walking down the hallway, and on the, I guess, what's the stadium? The Memorial Stadium, the people, they show them on their big screens there, them coming down the various hallways. Obviously, they have more hall space than you probably have at your home. You can't walk down halls for too long.
Yeah, we'd have to do a little trick.
Yeah, or you'd have to film elsewhere. So, but I was trying to make it your house so that it could be very homey. You're obviously a home-based show. And, various cuts of you doing that, looking very serious until you come out into whatever room. But I thought I'd combine that with Notre Dame. You're going to go down the stairs there, Mark, and on the sign will say, touch, it'll say either speak like a champion today or analyze like a champion today in yellow. So you're not going to play, so we'll use some words that'll be more fitting to the upcoming activity. You'll hit that, and maybe above there, I think they have their various national championships and records. Maybe for you, it could say like, Ohio State show, Iowa Collins show or so, Florida, Miami. You have your various other channel things you have, and you'll touch that, and then you'll come into the room where you normally sit at, and that could be a possible second intro to your show. What do you think about that one?
Well, what I think you gave me an idea.
Okay.
To kind of expand upon that idea.
Yeah, I know you've obviously more experience in TV production than me. We'll have zero.
No, I'm not the creative TV production guy. That has nothing to do with it. But you gave me an idea of how to kind of expand on that.
Okay. And the third possible idea, Mark, again, wouldn't call you this, but during the season, this is off-season type of talk, is we'll do the Clemson approach. You will be at the top of a hill, could be in a hilly part of Connecticut. You obviously need some help to do that. And you will be touching, we can make it a rock, or we can make it funnier, like a microphone, since we'll do something like that. You will touch that, and then you will hopefully not sprint, but you will jog down the hill. And you'll get some various shots, one of someone at the bottom of the hill, and then someone as you go down the hill, splice that up, various shots. And then somehow that'll cut to you getting into the room where you work. And that would be some kind of Clemson, the most exciting minute in a YouTube college football chat.
Yes, I'm sure the anticipation for my entrance then would just be at a fever pitch. You can only imagine. So my only question for you, Yakov, is when does the production crew show up?
Yeah. Well, I don't want you to spend too much, Mark. Hopefully maybe one of your kids could help, or maybe a friend. You'll need a few people for the high fives and stuff, but hopefully some people will just happily volunteer to do it, and it doesn't have to be a high, high level. Maybe a little bit better than an iPhone, but not a whole crew in there, professional crew in there. Some type of, how would you say it? What are those? Not a camcorder, but what if people have a GoPro? Nothing higher than a GoPro level.
Well, Yakov, I appreciate you putting a little bit of thought into that and presenting your ideas. And,
okay. Yeah.
But I will say that I'm guessing that our interaction back and forth about my entrance approaches could be like putting everyone to sleep.
Oh no! Okay. Well, I hope. Still, I enjoyed talking to Mark, and I wouldn't bother you this about during the season. I just had these various thoughts to say,
I think it's the season now. I think I better get with it. We're there.
Well, I'm looking forward to the rest of the show, Mark, and then maybe we'll do some. Everyone else, hopefully, will stick to more, football related talk.
Well, I enjoyed the conversation, Yakov. I'm just imagining others.
We'll have to look at the comments and see if anyone, said something positive to say about that.
Okay, Yakov. Anything else?
Mark, normally I like to say I think I normally have some decent insights. Today was a little bit more on the light side. And I'm going to end there, Mark, and let you get to the hopefully Ballard's ready for you.
Well, Ballard has apparently left us, but very good. Well, hope to see you this week for the Ohio State show, Yakov. Appreciate you
looking
being
forward
here.
to that show, Mark. I'll get back to work, but I will be listening.
Thanks, Yakov. Take
Okay.
care. All right, let's get to our next. We've run out of banners here, so we will need to delete them. We've got Christopher coming up here. We want to give him his proper banner here, and also I want to check. I'd like to check the results of the poll that we took about a week ago, where I have promised to deliver a live show for the team to be determined that wins the vote as a live kickoff to August camp. So we're going to do that. But actually, I want to do a ton of them. But the one that won will definitely get a live show. Christopher's on the line. How you doing, sir?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. What's going on?
Nothing. I was just curious. Have you had a chance to look at my? I went back and I did a compilation of all the teams from the beginning. Well, not from the beginning. That's not true. I was able to compile the titles together, and just wondered if you saw that. Did you happen to see that?
I have looked at very little since last Thursday.
Oh. Well, Ohio State finished
national championships, meaning national titles.
Well, no, that's a separate one. Yeah, I did that one too, but I'm still working on that, to be honest with you, because that was the other question I had for you. Because I kind of want your input, because I don't want it really to be my, I don't think I should really be the one to tell people what a champion is. And I know you kind of did your own. I don't know if it was. I didn't know that I really went into it far enough to where I could really understand exactly what you used. I know you kind of didn't you include conference championships?
Yes.
Wasn't that one of the? And that's probably not a bad way to go about it. And that was to what? To evaluate, kind of get an evaluation on where a team might stand against another one, maybe, or was that the idea?
Yeah, I named it all-time program rankings.
Right. The one thing I don't know if I told you, my memory isn't very good, Mark, and so I'm kind of. If I say the same things over, I apologize. That's not what I try to do, really. But I think one way to, like if Brigham Young, for example, I know I use them a lot, but you could take their conference titles, and then I think you have to you can divide them by 3 or whatever, and I think that kind of gives a rough approximation about where they'd be if they were a major program. You just take the same total and divide it by 3, I think. But that's just for information's sake. It's not to. I think you did something. Didn't you kind of evaluate Brigham Young, and you kind of took their titles and. Were you a little unsure exactly where to put them because they were a different?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, anyway, I was able to go back and I don't know if you know this website at all. It's mcube.net, I think, and it, for whatever reason, they seem to have all the information I needed to do an evaluation for everybody, and I was able to compile that all together, and I was able to evaluate every team from whatever. I'm not sure exactly what year they started because I don't work for mcube.net, but the net result was that it did put Ohio State first. I don't know if you were aware of that or not, but ahead of Alabama actually overall, and that was based on the metric that I use. It's I use a proficiency rating.
So back to the conference championships, Chris. How did you come up with the 1/3 measurement? Was that just
well, actually, it might have been 2/3. I think it's actually 2/3. I mean, I'm not, like I said, I'm speaking from. I think it's a 2/3 sort of thing, but relative to the major, I think you have to take, because that's where they fare in comparison, is about 2/3. I think it's only about. I think you have to divide by 3, but I think to get it up to where it's as good as where the other ones are, you have to multiply it by 2. So it's probably 2/3. But where did I get that? It's just. I did a survey. That's kind of what I did. Is I went back and did a survey, and as it turned out, I don't know what the right label is. They call it G5, but really, I think the That's a kind of a new label, isn't it? I thought it was kind of a mid-major sort of thing. That's just where they rate relative to by procedure I use. It's about 1/3 comparative. But you have to. But the reason it makes out 2/3 is you have to divide the P5, which is like the power conferences. I think you have to divide them by 2. So that's why I have to multiply by 2. I know it's really confusing, and I apologize for that. But I think it's relative to, it is 1/3, but to get them up to where they're up to P5, you have to multiply it by 2. So it's actually 2/3. But I mean, that's not really what I use though. So it's kind of, yeah, I take it and I divide by 3 is what I do to get them, the right evaluation for it, each one.
So I have no way to argue or counterpoint your group of 5 estimation I
think it's a fair one though.
In terms of a group of 5 winning a major conference 1/3 of the time or 2/3 of the time.
Well, that's not exactly what it was, but yeah, I mean, just to give you an idea, I think the reason I bring it up is I think you said you didn't know where to put Boise State because you said they were, and as it turns out, and you can make whatever value, whether you think it's fair or not. I think I have them 45th total. They're relative to everybody else. They're 45th as a program in comparison. So you can make up your own mind whether that's a fair evaluation or not. And I think Brigham Young was 59th.
Okay.
I don't know if that sounds good to you.
And that's an all time.
Well, yeah, it's all time as far as mcube.net is. I mean, I don't know where their stats began and end. So yeah, it's all time as far as what, I noticed that, for example, it didn't include like Yale and Harvard and Princeton. So I don't know. All time, I guess, except for the early seasons. I'm not sure exactly when they started because it doesn't include like Yale, Princeton, Harvard, and those other ones.
And the only reason I question the 1/3 or 2/3, of course, estimate is, so you're basically saying that if Boise State had 30 conference championships in the Mountain West, that's the equivalent of 10 conference championships in a major conference.
To be honest with you, Mark, that's not how I think it might even be 20, but that's not really what I do. I mean, that's kind of more your thing. I don't really weigh conference championships into it. So if that's something you wanted to do, I think that's what you would have to do is divide by 3, probably. So maybe 10.
Okay. So you didn't do that. You're just suggesting I do that.
Well, if you want to find the comparative, yeah, but that's not something I apply. So I don't.
So the only, and again, I've got no metrics to quantify this, but if we took all the American Conference and Mountain West champions in the history of those two, because those would be over time the 2 best group of 5 conferences that are at least still in existence.
Sure. Yeah, I'm not debating that. I agree with you on that.
Yeah. Okay. Do we really think that 1/3 of the time that those champions would win a major conference?
Well, again,
I personally don't, but
no,
I haven't run any kind of metrics.
Well, no, that's kind of what's interesting about the data that I did. I mean, I don't know, people can, I guess, question whether I did it right or not, and maybe even have good reason to maybe question whether I did. But, I tried to take everything into account to where, it really shouldn't be like Boise State shouldn't be upset that they're 45th. I mean, that's about where they should be. And same with Brigham Young, I think being 59th or whatever. And the interesting thing was I'd done something similar before. So I kind of knew that that's about where they should probably be. And so when they finished 59th, that seemed like that was kind of verification to me that I was doing it right. Now, I mean, but, both of the times I'd used my own metric though. So, I mean, people can say, well, I did it, with my metric, which is maybe, it still has to be, I don't have anybody like giving me the, gold seal stamp of approval, but, as far as what I think is fair, I think it came out about where I expected. So I think Boise State being 45th is probably about as good of places where they could probably be without leaning one way or the other. I mean, that's just based on what I know, and you can maybe throw into question whether I know enough to know what to do. But yeah, I took all the data that mcube.net has. They have all the data. It's kind of interesting. They had data that went back farther than I expected, really. And so I didn't have a lack of data. And like I said, Ohio State finished first. I'm not saying that to pander to you necessarily, but as it turns out, in terms of the way that the data fell, it fell towards Ohio State being the best team overall. I know that's probably going to be like, oh, well, Chris is catering to Mark or whatever, but that's not really what I'm trying to do. It just,
I know you're not doing that.
okay, well, if it had been Michigan or whatever, I wouldn't be like making it up that it was Ohio State. So, I mean, it was Ohio State, but I don't know if that really makes a difference or not. But and it was, the other thing was they were above 70%, and 70% is a real high value to have to even measure against. So the fact that Ohio State they're the only team that finished ahead of Alabama was real close. Alabama was right at 70%, but Ohio State was actually about 73%, which is, it's hard to even get to 70%. So the fact that they were above it says a lot about Ohio State as a program. It says that they're exceptional is basically what it says. And it also kind of says that Alabama's exceptional too. They're both exceptional.
Well, I will take a look at that, Chris. I will need to go through my comment section and catch up with that. But we got about 3 or 4 callers on the line that we need to get to.
Okay.
Thanks for the call.
You're welcome.
Have a good day, Chris.
You too.
All right. We're going to move it along with J-Dub.
Hey, good afternoon, Mark. Hope that you are having a great day. Everybody hit that thumbs up button. Quit procrastinating. Help
That's
the man
right.
out. I can't stand it, Mark. I can't stand it. You could take the best player at every position on the field that's ever played for Brigham Young, put them all together, let them practice for a month, and they would not beat any of the last 20 national champions with their all-time greatest team.
I agree.
We're talking, and I don't care if you take 500 index cards, write magical numbers on them, throw them off the roof of your house so that they scatter all over your yard, and you go and pick them up in a random fashion and come up with some convoluted formula. It is what it is. BYU's all-time greats are not beating 2001 Miami, 2014 Ohio State, 2015 Alabama, 2019, on and on and on and on.
Yeah.
I wanted to call and say that I live in the cultural backwater of Des Moines, Iowa, where everything is about a year old before it gets to us, and so therefore we don't have the SEC network up here. So I'm in the hinterland of trying to follow my favorite conference today. But I just wanted to say that I hope Sankey sticks with his guns and that the SEC stays at 16 and just runs a 3-6-6 rotating schedule. I'm not one of these guys that I understand. I get where let's go get Clemson and Florida State and 2 others. I mean, I get where that's coming from, but I don't want it. I mean, haven't we done enough? I mean, we're pretty good where we're at right now. I hope that they hope that Sankey holds his guns, but I'm worried that a Notre Dame move to the Big Ten might change everything.
Absolutely, J-Dub. I am.
What are you still with me on the 10th Avenue freeze out that the other conferences might just get the nerve worked up together to say when the playoffs are redesigned, if Notre Dame is still floating around independent, that they may just put a codicil in that would freeze Notre Dame out? Do you think they have the moxie to do that?
No, I don't believe it. I'm 100% backing of it. Absolutely. I would love it. That's what should happen. You don't have one straggler out here doing their own thing when everybody else has agreed to play within a structure and a conference, and you have conference championship games.
Yeah, I agree. I agree, even though I appreciate Notre Dame's history and their tradition. When it comes right down to it, they don't deserve any more special precedence than anybody else. I don't care who you single out. There should be no singling out.
The day it hit me, J-Dub, was because I used to defend Notre Dame's schedule because their schedule is still legit. But this was before that ACC contract really watered it down with the likes of the Georgia Techs and the Dukes and the Syracuse that they play over and over and over now, with playing 5 and 6 games every year against the ACC. But when that was Michigan State, Stanford was better, USC, was better. I always defended Notre Dame's schedule as,
Yeah.
they're not afraid to play anyone. They play this difficult schedule. It's usually one of the 5 toughest schedules in the country. Now it's more like one of the top maybe 30 schedules in the country, if that. But my issue was when it really came, because I used to defend Notre Dame and its scheduling as kind of, this is a replacement for playing a conference championship game because they play such a difficult schedule. But when I was sitting there watching Oklahoma and Ohio State have to play conference championship games in 2018, they were both 13-1.
Yep.
And one of them was going to get left out. And Notre Dame sitting at home at 12-0. And I'm thinking, Oklahoma's having to play Texas again and avenge a loss and win a conference. And Ohio State's going to be playing later tonight. And they're going to have to play for a Big Ten championship. And one of them's going to get left out. And it turned out to be Ohio State, while Notre Dame's sitting on the couch. And then it really crystallized 2 years later, because when you think about it, Notre Dame played Clemson in the 2018 semifinal college football playoff game. Well, that game should have been played in the ACC championship game. And then
Right.
Oklahoma and Ohio State would have both been, there wouldn't have been this excruciatingly difficult decision between those two. They would have both been in the playoff. And then here we are 2 years later in 2020, and Notre Dame and Clemson are playing in the ACC championship game. And I'm sitting there watching that thinking, this is what should have been happening 2 years ago. And why is it happening now, but only for one season? This is ridiculous.
Yep. I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. And, Notre Dame had that Midwest schedule, the Michigan States. They did every now and then they'd play Purdue, which is like an hour drive away. I mean, Notre Dame's campus is so centrally located. In the Big Ten, you can get anywhere in a couple hours. And that's great for their fan base, which is right there in Chicago. But, when some of those national powers slipped and some of those teams changed, like when the names changed from Michigan, like you said, when the names changed from Michigan to Duke, from Michigan State to Syracuse, some of the glamour went away. I don't mind Notre Dame saying, hey, look, we've always played Navy. Okay, well, keep your one game. You
can't
that's
play
understandable.
A top 5 team every week. Sure.
Right.
I have no issue with that.
Because I hear that all the time for people who want to trash Saban in Alabama. Well, what's Alabama doing playing Austin Peay? Well, look, if you were Alabama and you didn't have to play an 8-game SEC champion, 8-game schedule, and then 4 other Power Fives, would you? I mean, why would you do it? What's the benefit to you? So, and Saban has been forever. I think, I'm not going to definitively say it because I can't, off the top of my head, point you to the quote. But I think in the 2010 season, he started advocating for a 9-game SEC schedule.
Yep.
And one of the reasons why he was so pleased with the championship in 2020 was that they went 10-0 in the SEC. And I think if they left it to his own devices, he'd probably schedule 10 SEC games, throw in one other Power 5, and then have the paycheck game for somebody who needs the money. I don't ever have a problem. Ohio State wants to play Miami of Ohio or Eastern Michigan or some school that they're going to play Ohio State, and that trip to Columbus is going to pay for 80% of their athletic budget. That school needs that money. Let Ohio State schedule that one game. Let these big schools play the one game because it keeps these other smaller schools, they can't replicate that revenue stream. So I get that.
But the Ohio legislature actually mandated that game. They legislated that game in 1998 that Ohio State has to play an in-state school every year.
So they dropped the bomb and said, you're going to do this like it or not.
Yeah. And what's ironic about that, the first year, the BCS was 1998, and Ohio State finished fractions of a percentage point behind Florida State at number 3 with the same record. Right. Played in the BCS championship game. And it was figured out that because of the BCS formula, even though Ohio State beat Toledo 59-0, because Toledo was so incredibly awful, that game cost Ohio State going to the BCS championship game.
So the suits sitting in Columbus.
The very first year.
Yeah. Yeah. The only other time I'm aware of a state, I believe the Alabama legislature, because for years Alabama and Auburn did not play. There was a long stretch where they didn't play. And I believe it may have been state action or the threat of state action that forced them back into their rivalry. The only other time that I'm aware of that a state has gotten involved had nothing to do with a rivalry. It was when the Bears were remodeling Soldier Field about 15 years ago and had to play all their home games in Champaign. Well, at that time, you couldn't sell alcohol on a Big Ten campus at the stadium. So the Illinois state legislature had to intervene and say, for the hours around, from this time before to this time after these Bears home games that are at Memorial Stadium, alcohol can be sold there because it was an NFL game, not a, that's the only time I can remember. I mean, I'm sure maybe legislatures do get involved. I would prefer they not. What do they know about football? Hey, I'm sure the room is piled up and I've yacked on long enough. Thanks for having me on. And remember, folks, hey, the Amazon thing, look, this is so simple. You go to the link, you get the Amazon link. You're going to buy something off Amazon anyway, right? Okay. You're going to spend $80 on something for Amazon. All right. You think Jeff Bezos has got enough money? You think he's doing okay? How about if a $1.19 found its way into Mark's pocket? Just click that link and help the man out. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, J-Dub. Appreciate you, man. Our guy J-Dub always bringing sense to the conversation. Appreciate that. All right. I got tricked up. We had the real MVP on the line. Now we got Hunter. Hunter, thanks for being here. How are you today?
Good. How are you, Mark?
I am doing just fine.
Happy SEC Media Days.
Yes. A week-long event.
It's always one of those events that kind of kicks off the season for me. I think it kind of symbolizes that, hey, football's here.
Well, I find it funny that it's considered the unofficial kickoff, but the Big 12 Media Days actually started last week, and I don't know that anyone considered that to be the kickoff.
Well, Mark, did you see the Justice Haynes out of Georgia committing to Alabama over Georgia? His father was a Georgia legacy.
Yeah,
that was a real big surprise for me, and I keep up recruiting. I didn't think we were going to get him. I thought we would end up with Richard Young, who still could possibly end up at Alabama. So you could have 2 5-star running backs by the end of the cycle.
Yeah, is that a surprise to you?
Well, it hasn't happened that way since, was it Mark Henry and Derrick Henry and Bo Scarborough? Wasn't that the class that we had 2 5-star running backs in the same class?
That sounds right. Would that have been the 2013 or 14 class? 13?
Yeah. So that was a big little bit of a shock. I'm happy, of course, but you don't usually see those kids who have deep ties to a university usually go elsewhere. What do you think is going to happen? I've read a thing today where after Texas and Oklahoma joined the conference, they were not going to do away with divisions. So how do you think that'll end up with scheduling?
I think it's pretty clear cut if you move Oklahoma and Texas into the West, and then you take Alabama and Auburn and move them to the East. Well, you got Missouri. I jotted those teams down a few weeks ago, and I thought it was a pretty clear cut decision that could be made. Yeah, don't have the board here to jot them all down, but that's how I think they would do it, is put Texas and Oklahoma in the West, keep them together, and I guess you keep Missouri where they are, even though it would be an opportunity to geographically line them up where they should be, but then you'd have to tear Alabama and Auburn apart. Nobody's going to do that. Or you'd have to tear Ole Miss and Mississippi State apart. Or you'd have to move Arkansas to the east, and that makes almost as little sense as Missouri being there. So I guess Mizzou would just have to stay there. And you take Alabama and Auburn, and I think those are your two selections to go to the east, and you more so balance out the power.
Interesting. What was the rationale for moving Missouri into the conference when we accepted them into the conference?
Well, it's usually television markets, which equal money, and it's football ability, which equals money eventually. And Missouri was a decent program, as you know, in the Big 12. It wasn't like that they were winning conference championships in the Big 12. But I think between the St. Louis and Kansas City TV markets that the SEC was attracted to that.
Yeah, what year did that happen? Did they brought Missouri and A&M in the same year, did they?
2012, when Johnny
yes.
Manziel won the Heisman.
Yes, and I was at the Alabama and A&M game when Manziel beat Alabama at home.
Oh, nice. Well, not nice for you, but it didn't turn out to be like people cite that as a historic game, and I know that it was at the time, but it didn't change anything. It didn't determine anything in college football. Alabama still went to the BCS championship game and won, so it didn't derail them.
I think my favorite scenario that happened was when LSU beat Alabama in the regular season, then Alabama turns around and beats them in the national championship game. Because that was just an interesting dynamic, from a rivalry standpoint.
Now, you bring up the 2012 season and Missouri entering the conference. I remember watching Missouri's first SEC game. It was against Georgia, and it was at home. And they got murdered. Like, if we looked up the final score, I think it was like 41-17, but it wasn't that close. It might have been 41-10. It wasn't anything close to that. Georgia just sleptwalked through the second half. And of course, that Georgia team came within a whisker, as you well know, because you're an Alabama fan, of winning the national championship. And they were probably the second best team in the country. And they just crushed Missouri. And I was watching that, and I was overreacting. I call everybody else out for that and say we don't do that here, but I'm human. I was overreacting too and thinking Missouri and the SEC. Wow, this is going to be brutal. But they've recovered okay, and now they've kind of found their place alongside whoever else. Mississippi State and South Carolina, I guess, is they're going to go 6-6 every year, most years.
Well, I remember back then. I mean, I was 16 at the time, and back then I remember thinking Missouri. Like, I knew geographically it might have made sense, but I was like, because you just didn't hear about them. I mean, I can't tell you a memory of them before they entered the conference.
Mm-hmm.
And I know they faced us in the SEC championship a couple times. Who was the coach at that time? What was his name?
Gary Pinkel.
Yeah. And they had a decent team then. So all this conference realignment and everything is just. I think I said this the other day when I was in call. I think we just the dominoes just started falling after Oklahoma and Texas decided to join the SEC, and so all this craziness. I think everything, the dust will settle after the season. I think when the season gets here, I don't think people will be focused on that as much as they are right now.
Well, let's hope not. We talk about all this for months and months and months so we can actually watch football games. I can't wait to watch a football game.
What is the number one game that you're looking forward to see in the regular season this year?
It's hard for me to look past week 1. And And the most important games turn out to be conference games, but to me, they're not the most intriguing because we're used to those matchups. So I'm going to go to a non-conference game, and this is my bias coming out, admittedly, but Ohio State, Notre Dame, I want to see those two teams play. I'm really intrigued by Arkansas's two non-conference games against BYU and Cincinnati. And I like this Utah-Florida matchup in week 1.
I think that's the sleeper game.
I think it is too. Yeah.
I mean, I have ties to Utah, so I got friends that live up there, and so I paid attention to the program. So I know what they have from a coaching perspective and a sort of recruiting perspective.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of football talent in the Salt Lake area. I mean, Alabama's picked up several kids out of that area in the last few cycles, and I think those teams are most comparable as far as from a roster perspective. Maybe Florida has the edge because they're in the SEC and they're able to get South Florida kids, a lot easier. But I mean, just from a apples to apples comparison, they're more comparable than I think any of these teams that we're going to see this year. Of course, you get the big names, but the big games like the Ohio State Notre Dame game, which I'm really looking forward to see that one as well. But I think that's the sleeper game that not a lot of people are talking about, but I think it's going to end up being a really, really good game.
I think it's interesting to know that Bo Nix is going to play. He's going to play for the team that he played his first game ever against in a huge non-conference game that was nationally televised, and a lot of people watched, and he played a pretty awful game. And I'm saying that not to be critical. He just played a pretty awful game, but it was his first game ever as a true freshman. So, but then he pulls it out in the last 5 seconds of the game. So he's playing for that team, but he's playing against the Georgia team that he's already played 4 times. So, or 19, 20, 21, 3 times. So that's interesting, but I hope Oregon can make it a game, but I'm not expecting it to be a game. So there are other games that I'm looking forward to more than that, like the Utah-Florida game.
Hey, yeah, the another interesting matchup is the Auburn and Penn State game. It's going to be very interesting to watch. It's at Auburn, so I think I give Auburn a little bit of a little bit of a favoritism there in that game. Just because it's at Auburn. I mean, and that's going to be a big game for them because I don't think they've had to, other than regular season games, I don't think they've had a really, really big non-conference game at Auburn in a while. And so, I mean, and Auburn, the environment at Auburn, I'm a big Alabama fan, but I mean, I know what the environment is there. And so that's going to be a tough environment for them to play in.
Yeah, Clemson was there in 17?
Yeah, but that wasn't a game. I mean, I think Clemson destroyed them that game, didn't they?
They didn't destroy them. They sacked Jarrett Stidham 100 times. They did sack him like 11 times, but it was an okay game. That game like 17-6, 14-6, something like that.
But I think it was one of those games where the score might have not reflected it, but they were beating him worse than what the score reflected. I think it was one of those type of games. Yeah. Let me ask you this before I go. What do you think Spencer Rattler at South Carolina is going to do for that South Carolina team? How much of improvement do you think he brings to that offense?
I think he's a huge improvement. I think they went from playing 4 quarterbacks who did the very best they could, but none of them anyone would think should be starting for an SEC team. You're talking about the 4 quarterbacks that they started last year combined are probably in the 5 to 10 worst in Power 5 football of starting quarterbacks. And now they've got one of the 15 best. and I might be underrating him. I just want to see more. I put him around 14th or 15th in my rankings, but not that he doesn't have the potential to be even better than that. Now,
The question is
that their record may not reflect it.
The question is, what is the talent level around him? I mean, at the wide receiver position to be able to. I mean, where do you kind of assess that at?
I'm not going to assess it specifically, but because I'm still working on catching up with these teams, and I've been derailed here the last couple of weeks with too many other things. But I did read up on some South Carolina football, and yeah, their issues are more about rush defense and offensive line. They've got a really good running back room, and their wide receiver core. Now, by SEC standards, it's not extremely good, but it's good. It's capable.
Yeah, they're just one of the teams that I'm interested to see this year, just from a program standpoint. But yeah, there's a lot of interesting things going on this year. I mean, I think is it a rare year? I mean, to have these many big games like this, non-conference games.
No. You think? No.
Well, I mean, not. I mean, a lot of these teams usually they're at neutral site games, but a lot of these games are non-neutral sites.
So we always have the SEC and the ACC play a couple games. Like last year was Alabama, Miami on Saturday. Then they play in the same site in the same stadium on Monday, and that was Ole Miss, Louisville. So I don't know who's playing those games. I would have to think about it. Who's playing those games this year? Yeah, it's not coming to mind who's playing those games, but I'm
saying non-neutral site. Like, I mean, I think that's a more interesting dynamic. Though. I mean, yeah, we always have the big game, non-conference games, but a lot of times you're seeing Alabama play Miami or Louisville or Duke, and like the in Atlanta.
Yeah.
And then those games. But
sure. Alabama's going to Texas.
Yeah.
A&M was playing Colorado last year. This year they're playing Miami. So it's a much better game. I don't think that there's more big games that everybody's still scheduling their one or two difficult games outside the conference. Well, Hunter, I appreciate you being here.
All right. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Hunter.
Bye-bye.
We got a new caller. This will be the first time we'll hear from Tennille. Thank you so much for waiting, Tennille. Where?
Hey.
Yes, where are you calling from?
Atlanta. Roswell.
Tennille from Atlanta.
No, I'm from Georgia. I live in California, and I'm visiting Georgia.
You're a Georgia football fan?
I think so.
Okay.
I was born and bred.
Good time to be. All right. What's on your mind today?
I'm thinking about okay. Bowles came to us, right? And then we lost our player's son yesterday, right? Or was it 2 days ago? And me and Juan were talking about this, and Kirby, it goes way back. And so we were actually talking about someone's son actually disrespecting us. And so we were like, what the fuck? What the fuck? And so we were like, oh my God, please pray for me.
So Georgia fans are losing their minds over this?
Yeah. Well, but it's one player. That's what I said.
Sure.
It's one player, Shawnee. It's one player. I wish all my daughters went to UGA because we're legacies, way back. I was born this way.
Are you thinking you can compete for a national championship again?
Yes. I'm going. Listen, this is the first time in my life I've actually projected 12-0. This is the first time. Like, and if we have a loss, it's going to be Mississippi State because it's after Tennessee and Florida,
Okay.
Florida and then
On
Tennessee.
the road. Yeah.
Yeah, and they beat us up, and so like Leach has a mission,
Yeah,
like they have
see that.
something like to prove, right? So they want to fight us, and so the third game in a row. It's the third game, and so I was like, oh. I'm gonna like cross my fingers.
So, Daniil, after all those years of coming close, what did your celebration
41
look
years.
like?
Oh,
Yeah,
I was
41
alone.
years. Yeah.
I was alone in my house. I am a very isolated person. I hate people for the most part. And I was alone in my house for the championship. And it was January 10th. And like, it was so fucking beautiful. Like, it was amazing.
Yes, it was.
And that's the truth.
It was.
No, I know. I waited 41 years for this. Do you understand? I was born in 76. I remember 81, 80, 81.
Yeah.
Like, I
season.
remember.
January
No,
1st.
but my parents, like, you don't understand. I was born into this. And so,
Well, we appreciate you being here, Daniil.
thank you. Thank you, Mark.
Did you just find our show?
Go, Georgia Bulldogs! G E O R G I A. Go Dogs! I don't give a fuck with you.
Thanks, Daniil.
Thank you.
Okay. We know the fight song. We know the cheer with a few expletives mixed in. Very nice. All right. Let's go to, we got DeReal MVP jumping on here.
Hey,
DeReal
Mark,
MVP.
how you doing?
Try to follow that.
Oh, I don't know how I'm going to be able to follow that. I guess the only thing I will say, 12-0, predicting 12-0 will set you up for disappointment. But
yeah, there's nowhere else to go but down.
yeah, no, I mean, if I was a Georgia fan, after their bye, the stretch against Florida, Tennessee, at Mississippi State, at Kentucky, that's a brutal stretch. I think they could lose one of those games. Or if they were most likely to lose a game, it'd be one of those 4 games. Would you agree with that?
Oh, yeah. That's the stretch that they're going to probably get tripped up.
And the Big 12 had their media days, and they released their polling of who they think's going to come in first, second, third. Have you taken a look at it?
I know Baylor was chosen by the media, and Oklahoma was very close behind, like a 17-12 vote. Oklahoma State third, and Texas may have gotten a couple votes.
Yeah, Texas fourth, Kansas State fifth, Iowa State sixth, TCU seventh, West Virginia eighth, Texas Tech ninth, and Kansas 10th. Anything stand out with you about that list?
Well, just because of our connection with our buddy Golden Blue Dude and our West Virginia channel and West Virginia show, we know that the West Virginia guys that we have on here, GBD and Coos and Travis Kenobi, they're high on West Virginia, and I'm trying not to let them impact my impartial evaluation, because I'm hearing all this negative talk about West Virginia, like in that poll that you just read off, 8th in the big, Kansas is an automatic last. So basically West Virginia is 8 out of 9. I'm seeing a win total out of Vegas for West Virginia at 5.5.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look at, you got to be pretty bad when you play, a couple give me games out of conference to only win 5.5 or be it's tough to win 5.5, 5 or 6 wins. So I got sucked. This has bit me 2 years in a row now. We've got our Nebraska show, our Nebraska channel. We know what's been going on with Nebraska. In one word, they suck. And they have sucked for a long time. And 2 years ago, I was about to make my predictions, and my head was just totally on Wisconsin. So this is in 2020. Like I'm basically Wisconsin, maybe Iowa. And I'm wrestling between those two, and all that Nebraska hype, and the media, the Big Ten media picked Nebraska. It persuaded me. Why I let that happen, I don't know, because I was so locked in on, there's no comparison between these teams. Wisconsin and Iowa are so much more solid. Nebraska, and then they, of course, flopped. And then last year, I didn't come anywhere close to making that kind of prediction, but I had them at 5-7. I think it was 5-7, maybe 4-8. But I bumped them up a game just, I think, based on nothing but just hearing that Nebraska propaganda constantly. And I thought, I guess maybe they got something going and these people are excited. And I hate to admit that impacted me, but
okay, we're all human. The only games I'm looking at their schedule, the only games I would say are for sure wins is Kansas and Townsend. At Pittsburgh,
right.
At Pittsburgh's tough, at Virginia Tech's tough, and that's their other non-conference schedule outside the Big 12. So I know a lot of the West Virginia faithful are just 1,000% sure they're going to beat Pittsburgh. So my question to you is, how funny is it going to be on your West Virginia show when they lose to Pittsburgh like 27-20 and there's just a complete meltdown?
Yeah, like those guys are so sure that they're going to beat Pitt. And Pitt's a pretty substantial favorite by Vegas. It's like a full touchdown.
Yeah.
Or more.
We'll check.
Yeah, it's not going to be a good scene. I'm going to have to try to, restore order and try to, convince those guys to not jump off a bridge.
Yeah, 6.5. So I doubt you heard, but Lane Kiffin made some interesting comments about NIL. Do you care if I read those to you?
No, let's hear it.
He said, quote, "How do you do well at that? You have really good boosters. That's how you do well at that. I'll say what other people don't say, as you know. It's like a payroll in baseball. What teams win over a long period of time? Teams that have a high payroll and can pay players a lot, we're in a situation not any different than that."
So, again, he's walking on a line here, just like Saban did, where it can be treated as programs that have access to a ton of money can cheat and induce the players to come here. Or there's just programs that have a ton of money and legally under the guidelines can pay NIL money once the players are on campus and signed and enrolled, and it's just unfair. So he said
he also said to expand to that, he said, you legalize cheating, so get ready for the players that have the most money to get the best players, and now you have it.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's almost like, let's put it this way, and we know better than this, but I'm going to play it straight here. Before NIL, we're going to dismiss any cheating for a second. We're going to say, nobody cheated, everybody recruited above board. Well, we still had this. The same program still had all the money. They just put it into facilities and nice dining areas for the players and fancy this and fancy that and fancy transportation. It just did everything to entice the players to say, join us. We've got the best looking locker rooms and we've got slides and we've got pinball machines and everything imaginable and gold plated lockers and just everything. And most likely you're going to choose us. And most likely they did. They went to the best programs. Well, now it's an even more obvious connection because they can just say, here's the money straight to you. So I can't be mad about what Lane Kiffin had to say. It's the truth. Although he looks at it from his perspective, looking up at whoever's above him. But just like when he was whining about Jimbo Fisher this winter, he's tending to forget all the ones that are below him that don't have the Ole Miss resources.
Wasn't that the way it always works, Mark?
Yeah, absolutely. I used to experience this in corporate life when people knew how much money they made or how much their bonus was. They were typically pretty happy with that until they found out what other people made.
Yeah, it's quite a conundrum greed and jealousy can put on some people at times, I would say.
Yeah.
The final thing I'll ask you is, according to the FPI, everybody's favorite power index ever.
Yes, love it.
Kentucky has the third best chance of winning the SEC at 0.9%. Are you surprised that Kentucky's third, or are you surprised 0.9% is all they're given?
Wow. That's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
So Bama and Georgia are both at 49
and 47 respectively.
Yeah. Wouldn't you think that if we had the capability of playing 100 football seasons, that more than one time, 1 to 2 times, somebody, Texas A&M,
they're at 0.4%.
Ole Miss, somebody else could win the SEC?
I don't know. I'm just here telling you the number. LSU was in fourth with 0.8%. So they are extremely not high on anybody other than those two teams. And
you know what I think of the FPI.
I know what you think of.
Hey, that would be the conference to have those kind of numbers. That would be the one. I just don't believe in the FPI, because the FPI is the same one that not only projects win totals, but also during the game has that probability percentage of the win or the loss for that particular team, and it changes throughout the game based on the situation. And you'll see these situations that, yeah, that was a nice comeback, but it wasn't a 99-1 shot. Like, just because you're down 24-10 with 8 minutes left in the game, that's not a 99% chance that you're going to lose the game. I've seen that way too many times out of the FPI and thought, has this thing ever, it's obviously never watched itself. It's never watched football games itself.
So the final thing I'll say is, whenever you were talking about West Virginia, and I have something similar with Oklahoma, I don't understand the hype around them making the Big 12 title game. They have a brand new head coach. They lost their entire offense, basically. He's the head coach is a defensive guy. Oklahoma can't stop a paper thin defense, and that might be a compliment to them.
Yeah.
So why are people projecting them to win 10 games or 9 games?
No.
Like, I think 8-4, 7-5 is possibility for them.
Wow. Well,
and I think if they were Kentucky, I think people would project them lower, but I think because of the brand Oklahoma, people get biased because of that.
Sure. Well, what did Lincoln Riley do his first year? What did Ryan Day do his first year?
Well, I understand that, but they had more talent than this, first off, and those were more offensive-driven guys. This is a defensive-driven guy.
They do have arguably the best quarterback in the conference.
Yeah, I get that, but I'm not sold on Dylan Gabriel, because last time he played, he tore his ACL.
Oh, if they lose him, and they've got a very inexperienced quarterback room.
Yeah, I just don't know what to expect from him. I mean, there's plenty of quarterbacks who are really good, get injured, and it's unfortunate, but they get injured and aren't the same. And that's kind of the same thing I'm thinking with JT Daniels. So like you can't come for these injuries and just be 100%. You're going to lose a little bit of your ability.
Yeah, many times.
Right.
Not all the time.
Oh yeah,
but
there's
most of
exceptions,
the-
obviously.
Yeah.
So are you thinking? What are you thinking about
Well,
Oklahoma?
I'm thinking that Texas has the best talent in the conference. They just actually do.
Mhm.
They have brought in the best. It's very close between Texas and Oklahoma if you look at the recruiting rankings. And then Texas, of course, had a huge haul in the transfer portal. Oklahoma State and Baylor were the two best teams last year. And
Nebraska, that's not an easy non-conference game.
no, but that's not going to determine their conference season.
No, but it'll determine their overall record.
Yeah. I will make my predictions, of course, at some point. But if you were going to ask me right this second, I'm going to tell you that Oklahoma's a 9-3 team.
That's fine. I can understand that.
Which is, of course, below their standards. When's the last time they lost that many games? It's been 8 years.
It'll be interesting. Thanks, Mark, for giving me the time to talk to you. And hit the like and subscribe button. Let's try to get Mark to 36,000 subscribers.
Oh, sounds good to me. Thanks, DeReal. Appreciate it.
No problem.
All right, folks, let's keep it rolling here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate all your calls coming in. We will keep these in line. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Marcus. Michael, how you doing today, sir?
Michael, how are you?
I'm hanging in there, and blood clots are no fun. I hope you never have to deal with them.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
How are you now?
I'm hanging in there, and I was going to go down to Atlanta this weekend, but doctor said that's a no-go. Anyway, got a couple questions. This is in reference to the Michigan podcast when he was on Steve as a guest to Steve during the 10-minute war.
Yes.
How much did you really agree with him about Michigan and Purdue, and also about him with Ryan Day and stuff like that?
Well, you probably remember that he served up Minnesota to the Rose Bowl as the Western champion.
Mm-hmm.
And I let him know that Minnesota had a more difficult draw in the Eastern Division than
Purdue. Mm-hmm.
And, he went on and on about how much he poured over that decision. That was a tough call for him to make. So he's very much in line with Purdue possibly winning the West. That's his second choice.
Okay. And about the other deal about Ryan Day succeeding Andy Reid.
Well, three things have to happen. Reid has to leave. Day has to get hired, and then Fickell to Ohio State are his three-part plan there. I do think that the most likely of those three would be, if the first two happen, that Fickell goes to Ohio State. I think he's their guy, and because of the work he's done at Cincinnati, that he's the obvious choice. I don't follow Andy Reid and the Chiefs to the extent that I got a real feel for how long he wants to coach. He's been there now for maybe about 10 years.
I think so.
And he's won his Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly if they go out on top again this year. Now, selecting Ryan Day as the next Chiefs coach, while it's certainly possible, that's the long shot of those three happening. There's going to be a lot of great candidates. It's a tremendous franchise with a great quarterback. Kansas City would be one of the more prime spots for a head coach to go to. So for them to hire an inexperienced NFL coach, it's happened.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly Cliff Kingsbury's at Arizona with much less of a resume than Ryan Day.
Mm-hmm. And how do you think Jim Knowles is going to be? And how many games do you think it'll take for Ohio State to see if they're going to be good or if they're going to be like they were last year on the defensive side of the ball?
Sure. The one thing that I question about Jim Knowles and not about his ability, but it took him a while to fix Oklahoma State's defense. They didn't experience improvement until their third year. They actually regressed when he got there. They actually were worse his first 2 seasons on defense. They went from I ran the numbers at one point. They went from 70th in the country in defense to 80 something to 90 something before he started them back on the right track. And he's got a fairly complicated defense. The one aspect that makes it more feasible or more reasonable for Ohio State to learn it is that he brought over Tanner McAllister, his most experienced player at safety, a second-team All-Big 12 safety the last 2 years, who started 41 or 44 games for them. And so when you've got that kind of player that has that much work and that many reps in a system, and then he can come with the coach to help teach his teammates, I think that's a pretty big benefit. But with no live action or preseason games to work into this Notre Dame game, it's not like they get the the Toledo game or the MAC type game in week 1 and then can prepare for Notre Dame. It's full go. So I expect them to have some bumps in the road, but I expect them to be much better on defense. I don't expect them to have a great defense this year, but I expect them to have a top 30, 35 defense.
Okay. Speaking of a couple other things, do you think the Notre Dame game could be a trap game?
Well, define trap game for me, because Michael, for me, a trap game is if you're Purdue and you've got a trip to Wisconsin and then you play Rutgers and they're supposed to be the worst team in the Big Ten, and then you've got another trip to Iowa the next week. That Rutgers game's your trap game. I don't think Notre Dame's a trap game. Ohio State should be laser focused.
Yeah, because the thing with that is I'm not even sure who Notre Dame quarterback is. Speaking of defenses, how do you think even though with Karlaftis and gone and stuff like that, and his name is escaping me, Alexander, how much better do you think Purdue could be a top 30 to 35 defense yourself this year?
Well, I thought they missed Karlaftis in the bowl game. I thought that was obvious, because how many games did Purdue really get shredded last year?
Just Wisconsin, Ohio State.
Yeah, and the Wisconsin game, they didn't really get their backs broken until really late in the game.
The fourth quarter, yeah.
Yeah, they got worn down by Braylon Allen.
I would actually probably say the Ohio State games, they really got their 6 handed to them.
Yeah. If Purdue's defense is as good this season as last season, and we know that they're not going to have a good running game, but they need to have a serviceable running game. That's where they really need to support Aiden O'Connell with, 30 carries for 110 yards against Big Ten opponents. Serviceable, a running game that makes defenses respect the run.
Yeah, and losing James leaving again kind of hurt Purdue, because he's going to be – I'm not sure who they got besides Drury, and then I can't remember the other back they had, because I know Horvath's went to the Chargers. I'm trying to think Dylan. Right now, it's escaping me. But the last thing is I'm going to email you here in a little bit, because there's something I need to talk to you about.
Okay.
Except I'm not sure how long you're going to be streaming today on this stream right now.
Well, we're going to take a few more calls here at least, but give me a holler.
All right. I was just wondering, because it's kind of time sensitive. So anyway, thanks. Thanks anyway, and have a great rest of the time down in Atlanta for SEC days.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Okay, let's keep it rolling here at the Voice of College Football, but let's first take a second just to hit the pause button. So we've got an Amazon link, as J-Dub let you know. Go to the description section of any of the videos. Amazon link helps us build the channel. Put it somewhere where you will remember it when you're shopping on Amazon, because you use that link, you go into Amazon and you're in Amazon, just like you are at any other time. So it doesn't cost you a penny. It's the same shopping experience. Just please use the Amazon link. All right. Big Tuesday coming up here at the Voice of College Football. We'll have our USC show at 4 Eastern, 1 Pacific, Iowa at 5:30 Eastern, and then Nebraska Live at 7 Eastern. We're putting together an SEC Media Days wrap-up from an LSU perspective. That'll be on tonight sometime around 7 or 8, so be looking out for that notification for another live show tonight about 7 or 8 Eastern time. Also, we've run this poll. I'm going to look up the numbers here while we're taking our next call of what team, besides all the live streams we already do with these team-specific live streams with the channels we already have established, what team and the winner of the vote will get a live stream for an hour focused on that team to kick off August camp. So the winner will get that, but I'm going to try to do a ton of those. So not just for the winner, but for everybody else. So we do have Sean on the line. Welcome in, Sean. How you doing?
Hey, it's Sean from Centerville. How are you doing, Mark?
Good. What's going on?
Hey, I just thought I can't believe you're working. I saw your little, I guess, one of those reels, and it sounded like you were going to be out for a few days. So you're the Iron Man of college football.
Oh, I was out for a few days, but I was actually doing more work being off than being here. So, but just had other things to take care of. So,
well, when Steve Deese comes back out with his new rankings of players and teams, I hope he's looking at the blue chip ratio, because, you know, if he really thinks that Michigan is close to Ohio State in the blue chip ratio type of deal, I mean, we're looking at 80% versus 59%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then if you add in the transfers, because he talks about transfers, it just drops Ohio State down from 80 to 78% versus Michigan at 59%. So I think that's a very interesting. So that I think that makes up of 5 and 4-star players, and then that percentage of the team. So I'm confused on how he even came up with his rankings, but so
I brought that up to him maybe 5 times, and I still don't get it either. And I have great respect for his metrics and all of his systems and everything he's put together, and it 90% of the time makes sense to me, but I can in no way understand a system that spits out Michigan having more talent than Ohio State. Because Ohio State, as you well know, lost recruiting stars through the transfer portal, but none of that was productive on the field. Like Quinn Ewers being a loss through the transfer portal, you know, takes a hit to Ohio State's recruiting ranking, but Quinn Ewers never did anything for Ohio State. So that's really no loss.
And then just looking at this blue chip ratio that they put out, this is the current roster. So it's very interesting. Well, that's all I had for you today. Have a good one.
Thanks, Sean. Appreciate it. Thanks for being here at the Voice of College Football. I will look up those results. And again, the team that gets the most votes will receive a fall camp kickoff live stream. And we'd like to do a bunch of those anyway. So here we've got, I believe we got Will on the line. Look at
Mark,
that.
I'm incensed with Tim Tebow.
Uh-oh, what's he talking about now?
You said at the beginning of the show. Right?
That line, yeah.
Yes. That's just not true. Like, look at who Notre Dame's bringing back, and look at what LSU's bringing back. Notre Dame clearly has the better. Like, I'm not saying LSU's going to be a bad team at all. I think they can win some games in the SEC.
Yeah,
but
talent, sure.
Yeah, but just like look at the preseason All-Americans at Sporting News. Notre Dame has 3 first-teamers. LSU has 1 second team, and Notre Dame also has a first team. I mean, 1 second team as well. I just don't understand. Like, is he just saying this for ESPN since ESPN is angry that they don't have Notre Dame TV contract. Like
when ESPN hires someone like Tim Tebow, you know, there's notoriety there, obviously.
I mean, Tim Tebow
I
was my
can't
favorite
imagine
player
that
growing up.
Tim Tebow is poring over metrics a la Phil Steele. You know, I just don't think he's really putting a whole lot of home. And I might be wrong. I shouldn't say this. I'm making a huge assumption, but I can only my only evidence is based on what comes out of his mouth, just like some other people, Desmond Howard, some other people that I question when they're talking about the, just pick a game, Notre Dame Purdue game that week, that they know anybody besides the 2 or 3 obvious players that everyone's heard of. Yeah, I don't trust the research there. I don't trust the homework that's being done.
Yeah, it just like why are you like I just, it hurts me more that Tim Tebow said it, because like Notre Dame didn't have really any great quarterbacks. I mean, Jimmy Clausen was good, but he wasn't a likable guy. And like just seeing Tim Tebow, who was like my favorite non-Notre Dame player because of like his story, say that, it just hurt my soul. It hurt my soul.
Yeah, I like Tim Tebow. I've got nothing against him. I got sick of hearing about him, but that wasn't his fault.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I am very excited for the LSU show. I don't know. I'm just going to be like locked on LSU. Like not as much as Notre Dame, but
yeah, we're going to have our LSU guy here, Lon Philip Sullivan. And of course, LSU and Brian Kelly went today. Mm-hmm. So we'll see what he has to say about that.
Why do people look at the blue chip thing so much and not look at the production coming back? That's what I don't understand. Like when people say blue chip, like, I mean, yes, it's important to bring in good recruits, but I think it's more important on how you build these recruits, how you train them to be college football players and not just talent.
So that's one of the reasons why I like Steve Dace's metric about the total team talent rankings. So take your best example of a 2-star, 3-star who became a star, a real star, JJ Watt or somebody like that. Well, as soon as they prove what they've proven, they prove to be a great player. Well, it no longer matters. Mm-hmm. They were completely disregarded because they become a great player. They're proven. Likewise, the 5-star who now is a senior and has never really done anything but play special teams. Well, they're really no longer a 5-star. Do they have the potential to kind of break out and finally live up to their potential? Mm-hmm. Sure, it happens, but it's very doubtful at that point.
Because people are like, oh, Texas is going to be so good. Texas is going to be so good. But Texas, they lost to Kansas last year. Like, I'm not saying that Texas is going to be a good... I mean, they'll win maybe 8 games. Like, they could have a bounce back year, but I don't think they're going to win the Big 12 by any means with what they looked like last year. And I mean, Bijan Robinson's going to be great, but I don't know really anyone else on Texas that's coming back. I mean, maybe I should, but...
Well, Xavier Worthy's one of the best wide receivers in the country.
I remember his name, yeah. Yeah.
And they picked up a couple nice players from Alabama, Jaleel Billingsley, the tight end, and Drew Sanders at linebacker. Mm-hmm. And Ajay Hall, who was a top 50 recruit in the country that signed at Alabama and played a handful of games last year. He has moved on to Texas.
Yeah, but it's definitely fun with the unknowns. Like, is Oklahoma actually going to be good? Is Texas actually going to be good? What USC is going to look like? It's just like more fun, more college football fun for this year, like with all the unknowns.
Yeah, there are unknowns, but when it all shakes out,
it should be
hard to
yeah
envision anything being that shocking.
Yeah, but it's like, will Nebraska actually be able to put together? Will Penn State be good? Because Penn State didn't have a good year. Will they be able to bounce back, or will that James Franklin contract look awful?
See, that's what I try to get ahead of when I make predictions. Mm-hmm. And instead of just throwing darts and saying, Minnesota's going to win the Big Ten just to make a statement and just be ridiculous. I want to believe something. I want to try to see that ahead of time and truly forecast it with some confidence, and then see it come to fruition.
I think that Minnesota will win the Big Ten West because they changed offensive coordinators. Like Mike Stanford was the offensive coordinator at Notre Dame, was not good. He got fired after let go after the 2016 season. Minnesota brought them in thinking it would make their offense better. It did not make their offense better. He is gone, and they brought back the person that they had before Mike Stanford. That's why I think Minnesota will do it. But who knows? I mean, maybe Purdue could do it, but I just don't trust Purdue's defense.
Yeah, Minnesota had a better defense than most people realized last year.
They did great against Wisconsin's run. They just shut them down, won the axe.
Yes, they did. And I don't believe Bowling Green's on the schedule again this year. So
it's just hard to believe. Like, maybe they just got better over the season, but it's crazy how, like, these teams can lose to these group of 5 teams or FCS teams and just turn it around.
When you play the style of football Minnesota does, and Minnesota threw less passes, I believe the number was 257, than any team in college football except the military academies. They played 13 games and they threw 257 passes, less than 20 per game. So if you play those style games, then you run the risk of having a few things go wrong, even against a team that you should trounce, and being in a, whatever the score of that game was, 14-9 game, and have that happen.
Yeah, that's true. Well, it makes sense when you say it like that.
Anything else, Will?
I'm trying to remember. There's one thing I was thinking of. I can't think of it right now. I'll ask you it again soon. But thanks for having me on, Mark.
All right, Will. Have a good one.
Show should be fun.
We'll see you soon. And we will take our last call. I would love to give a full analysis on the Citadel Furman game because we do have Citadel football fan here. Maybe we should have you on to give us your Citadel take. Hey, I got nothing for you. You shouldn't be surprised by that. There we go. We got Tim on the line to cap it off.
Yeah, how's it going? Sorry, hold on, I got a little noise in the background. Good. I wasn't getting on until I just found out the news that Curtis just pulled the trigger on coming to USC. Just thought I'd call in.
Okay.
That's a huge pickup at linebacker. It's a position we really, really need. I mean, we've been going through the portal, but again, it goes back to what I think that. So here's my thing. Lincoln Riley said he was coming to SC because he felt like he couldn't get the players he needed over at Oklahoma, and everyone pushed back on him for that, right? Is that correct?
Sure.
Have you looked at Oklahoma's recruiting class?
It was pretty bad until about 10 days ago, and they've signed some pretty high 4-stars recently, but overall it's 12 or 13 in the country, something like that.
Well, they've got one top 100 defensive. See, here's what I thought. I thought with Todd Bates, with Brett Venables, I'm like, okay, I don't know about their offense, but their defense is going to be just insane, and they're going to recruit. Again, I was thinking Todd Bates. Here come a waterfall of 5-star, edge rushers and defensive guy, interior defensive guys, defensive tackles with Bates. Sure. I was talking to Jordan Bowman about it, and he's like, well, actually, yeah, he had a really good run about 4 or 5 years ago, but Bates has kind of dropped off lately. And I was like, oh, okay. But I'm looking at saying that all the crap that Riley got for saying that he just couldn't build the roster he wanted at Oklahoma. And I'm looking at a guy like Brent Venables, who is arguably one of the top defensive coordinators as a defensive coach. You need to be huge allure there for that. Plus you have Todd Bates, and they're still struggling to get top defensive recruits there. So, I mean, it's still July. It's not the end, but I mean, I feel really good about getting Mateo Uyungule. I think SC's going to nail him. I think that they're in a really good spot for Nicholas Harbor, who's an athlete, but he's going to be like a defensive end or an edge rusher. And I don't know. It's starting to show exactly what Riley said. I don't know what your thoughts on that are.
Well, I wanted to look at Oklahoma's commitment list because, yeah, it was pretty weak, and they've kicked it up here in the last 2 weeks. They're up to number 9. So on the defensive side, surprisingly, their top 3 commits are offensive players.
Yeah.
And then Adeboju Adebore out of Kansas City's there. He's an edge rusher. He's their top defensive player, and he's 86th in the country. So he's a top 100 player. He's their only top 100 player on defense. And then their next 2 guys, Lewis Carter, he's a top 200 player, and so is Samuel Omasigo, and he's a linebacker as well. They're number 9 in the country, and they've brought in, let's see, their hard commit total 16. So that's about what they're competing against right now. Everybody's in that 15 or 16 range. The thing that I would challenge Jobo on, that and he knows a lot more about Clemson football than I do because he's in on it every day. But when he says that they reached a peak 4 or 5 years ago, yeah, they recruited that like all-time great 2018 defensive line. But up until even last year, their defensive line was devastating.
No, I agree. I agree. I think that they're going to have one of the best front sevens. They're going to have one of the best front sevens. I think Notre Dame, Georgia, and Clemson are going to have really great front sevens. I'm there. I know that they have talent there. That's what I'm saying. Todd Bates, I said, even though he said that, to me, when I hear the name Todd Bates, I think the elite defensive lineman. It just popped right off the top of my head when he's recruiting, and developing. And my question is just that, a lot of Riley got just blasted for saying, oh, he threw his team under the bus. Oh, blah, blah. Or maybe he was just making a solid comment about the fact that Oklahoma doesn't have a natural recruiting base. You don't get a lot of 5-star defensive linemen in Oklahoma, or defensive players at all. And he said, I'm going to go over here to another school where I feel that I can build a defense to match my elite offense. And I think, again, the sample size is very small. But pulling in Curtis, knowing that it's almost, as I'm going to say, it's a slam dunk. But if you ask anyone, that Mateo's most likely going to be coming to USC. And I mean, if not a lean, he's like everything points, everything he wants, and matches, with the Jimmy Levine and Dr. Dre school of music production. That the kid is, I mean, you can smirk, dude, but his biggest thing. Well, think about these kids.
Because it's not legit. I'm smirking because it just strikes me funny.
Well, I mean, remember, these kids are football players and everything, but they also have other interests. And apparently, from everything I've heard, is he's a huge music guy, and he sees in the future of his life. I'm sure he's an insane football player. He wants to go to the NFL, but as well as he'd like to be a music producer one day. And so when you got one of the top things, for music, which is it's pretty damn big. It's not just some studio that Oregon threw together for him when he on his visit. It's like a legit school for like 5 years. That's going to weigh heavily. The fact that the location, everything. Mateo's, again, I would be shocked if he didn't come to USC. Anything's possible with NIL, but I mean, I'd be shocked if he didn't come. And then Nicholas Harbor's always been flirting with USC. The DMV connection to USC is pretty strong. So I see USC getting at least 4 to 5 top 100 guys, like elite guys, mixed in with other 4-star defensive players. And I think Riley's showing exactly why he decided to make the move.
Here's my question for you, Tim. You jump in all these chats. And especially, I'm thinking about some of your comments and some of the conversations you get into in the Oklahoma chat, which is, of course, pretty amusing and entertaining for me to kick back and watch your interactions over there. So, truth be known, try to take yourself back 7 or 8 months. What did you think of Lincoln Riley before he was the head coach at USC?
I thought he couldn't win the big game. I thought they were all offense, no defense. All the same things that I was hearing, that I've heard coming out of Oklahoma after he left. what I will say is when I was making those comments and I had those views of it, I didn't know much about Lincoln Riley. I didn't know much about their situation. I didn't know how difficult it was to recruit defensive players at in Norman. I didn't realize how bad their defense was before Lincoln Riley got there. So I've learned a lot of different things. I mean, Bob Stoops, when I think Bob Stoops, I think defense. But if you look at what they had going on at Oklahoma before Lincoln Riley got there, you see, I didn't put all this stuff together. I just went with whatever the narrative was. So before he came to USC, I was like, yeah, all offense, no defense, can't coach defense, can't win the big game, et cetera, et cetera. But I never really looked into it. Do you know what I mean? I just would watch and get, 1 or 2 games a year. I'd watch them get smoked in the playoffs. Go, that's what they are. Great offensive mind. But then when they become your head coach, when you begin to actually look into things, then you do get a different perspective. So absolutely. I mean, the narrative on him right now is exactly that. Is it an excuse or is it a legit reason? He's saying that he was unable to pull the defensive players he needed. We're going to find out. Maybe he comes to USC and it's the same thing. All offense, no defense, getting smoked in, a big bowl game or a playoff or whatever. I'm saying the small sample size we have right now, it's showing that coming to USC is giving him access to some of the more elite top 100 players, and that maybe his comments weren't just excuses. Maybe it's exactly what he said. Hey, if I want to compete, because now obviously we know he's been there. He's seen what you need to have in order to play against Alabama, LSU, Clemson. He knows exactly what he needs. And he's saying, hey, man, I can't get that here. I need to go somewhere else. So, is he able to do it at USC? Who knows? Maybe he needs to go to a different school than USC. I'm saying things are pointing in the direction that he is going to be able to do that. And I know historically at USC, I mean, Clay Helton got the #1 recruit in Corey Foreman. I mean, you're going to get guys just because it's USC and because it's in Southern California and because of school. I know Oklahoma has a great tradition. I know hard to say because the way they talk, they've got great fans. They've got a great, situation going on there. And maybe it's because I'm in Southern California, USC fan, but I don't think of Oklahoma and USC in the same. To me, I don't think they're in the same category. Maybe that's just me as a fan. But I mean, I saw what Pete Carroll did, and I know I've heard from my dad what John McKay did. I know what even Larry Smith did. I mean, Larry Smith was a pretty good coach. He took Tollner's players and went to 3 straight Rose Bowls. You know what I mean? So you can win at USC at a huge clip, and you can win on the national stage, and you can build dynasties here. And I think with a coach like Riley, who's proven that at least he can get to that level, maybe he took Oklahoma as far as he could take it. I'm not saying that Brent Venables isn't going to win a national championship at Oklahoma. I'm saying maybe Riley took it there as far as he could take it. And I thought that when Venables came in, again, it's like a broken record with Todd Bates, that they were going to crush it in defensive front 7 recruiting. And that just hasn't been the case. So anyway, I wasn't going to even call in, but someone in the chat told me about Tackett Curtis. I said, oh, wow.
Yeah,
it's some momentum. So I thought I'd go, okay. I was actually going to ask you, but you haven't been around. I almost DM'd you to say, hey, have you heard anything about Curtis from all your Bucknut guys? Because I heard he didn't have the best of, the rumor was he didn't have the best of official visits. I don't know if that's just what it is. Maybe it was a character issue, or maybe it was like he didn't mesh with other players, but that's what I heard. Did you hear anything about that?
I haven't really been too connected with anyone the last 3 or 4 days. So no.
All right. Well, again, thanks for the time.
Thank you, Tim. Appreciate you being here as always. Guys, get on over to a Discord with Tim and Exploring with Ben and everybody else there on Discord. What you do is you go to Patreon, search Mark Rogers TV, and I will welcome you, the big hug, virtually, the big welcome letter, send you the link to get you on Discord. So again, go to Patreon, search Mark Rogers TV, sign up on Patreon, $5 a month. $5 a month, get you on Discord, and you can talk to me. You can talk to all these guys. We get about 55 people there, something in that range. And we're talking college football 24/7, 365. So everything you do in here that you have to wait until we start a live stream, You can do all the time. And the more people we get in there, the better it's going to get. Right now, we've got a channel. And when I say a channel, it's not like a YouTube channel. When I say channel, they're called channels in there. They're basically chat rooms. So we've got a chat room for each Power 5 conference and a national channel, a national chat room. And then these guys started a chat room just for stuff that they just wanted to talk about outside of football. So great. And like I was explaining to somebody just yesterday, the bigger this gets, the more we'll be able to narrow it down to specific chats. Like if you want to talk recruiting, we'll have a recruiting chat room. You can just talk recruiting. Or if you want to talk, it's during the season and you just want to talk about the USC Notre Dame game, we'll have a USC Notre Dame chat room for that week of the game, or maybe 2 weeks leading into the game. And we'll start to do those sorts of things as well. So again, Patreon, search Mark Rogers TV. I get you the link. You got Discord. You got my picks coming up this season. You got exclusive live streams per request, and you get the predictions, weekly predictions of a lot of guys that you see on here on a regular basis. Steve Dace, Tony Gerdeman, Steve Hellwagon, the Wholesome One, on and on and on and on. All right, everyone. Appreciate you being here. The Voice of College Football. Keep those notifications open because we are going to be here live tonight. Got to work out the details. Could be 7 Eastern, 8 Eastern, 9 Eastern, somewhere in that range. Looking at LSU's part in the SEC Media Days, Brian Kelly was at the podium and 3 players. And we'll talk LSU football tonight. And, of course, we'll open it up to all of you joining us as well right here at the Voice of College Football. We'll see you tonight.